My name is Nora, and I'm 67 years old. My granddaughter Sophia has been the light of my life since the day she was born. We've always had a special bond, and I was thrilled when she asked me to plan her Sweet 16 celebration. I never imagined that after spending $12,000 on her perfect party, she would stand up in front of everyone and say those words that cut straight through my heart. The confusion and hurt I felt in that moment is something I'll never forget. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you love, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button as I share what happened after I quietly walked out of that party. The bond between Sophia and me began 16 years ago in the hospital delivery room. My daughter Julia was only 22, then young and overwhelmed. When Sophia was born, I was right there cutting the umbilical cord, while my son-in-law Roger took photos. Those first moments holding her tiny body against my chest cemented our connection. What none of us expected was how severe Julia's postpartum depression would be. For those first critical months, I practically moved into their small apartment, taking night shifts with the baby so Julia could sleep preparing meals and keeping the household running while Roger worked double shifts to cover the medical bills. "Mom, I don't know what we'd do without you," Julia would say on her better days, watching me rock Sophia to sleep with the special swaying motion only I could perfect. Those early months turned into years of being Sophia's steady presence. Julia and Roger's marriage started showing cracks when Sophia was around 4. The arguments, the tense silences, the separate bedrooms. Through it all, my home became Sophia's safe haven. Every weekend she'd arrive with her little backpack, decorated with butterflies, eager for our special time together. "Grandma Nora, can we make snickerdoodles today?" she'd ask, already pulling the step stool toward the kitchen counter. I taught her to bake before she could properly pronounce cinnamon. Those weekends filled with cookie-baking bedtime stories and Sunday morning pancakes shaped our relationship. As Sophia grew, our traditions evolved. When she was 8, we started our Adventure Fridays during summer breaks. I'd pick her up early and we'd drive to different locations within a few hours of the city. We explored small museums, hiked nature trails, visited farms where she could pet animals, and discovered quirky roadside attractions. "This is our secret mission," I'd tell her as we set out each Friday morning. "Today we're explorers." She'd giggle and play along, her eyes wide with excitement for whatever modest adventure I'd planned. Those memories stored in photo albums and inside my heart became our shared treasure. Financially supporting Sophia often meant personal sacrifice. My nursing career provided a steady income, but not excess. Still, I prioritized her needs and reasonable wants. I helped with school supplies, paid for her dance classes when Julia and Roger claimed they couldn't afford them, and started a small college fund that I contributed to monthly, even if it was just $50 at a time. "Mom, you don't need to do all this," Julia would sometimes say. "I want to," was always my simple reply, and I meant it. Seeing Sophia thrive was worth every penny. The changes in Sophia began subtly around 8 months before her 16th birthday. Our once eager weekends together became less frequent. "I have plans with friends," became her common refrain when I'd invite her over. I first noticed the shift in her attitude after she started at Westlake High School, where she befriended a group of girls from the more affluent part of town. Madison Tiffany, Kylie, and Amber came from families with substantial means. Their parents drove luxury cars, owned vacation properties, and provided their daughters with seemingly unlimited budgets for clothes and entertainment. The red flags appeared gradually. Sophia began making comments about my modest one-story house with its comfortable but dated furniture. "Grandma, you really need to update this place. It looks like a time capsule from the 90s, she said one afternoon, scanning my living room with newfound criticism. When I picked her up from a friend's house in my reliable 10-year-old Honda, she asked to be dropped off a block away. "Just let me out here," she said, already reaching for the door handle. "But we're not at Kylie's house yet," I replied, confused. "It's fine. I'll walk the rest of the way." She hurried out before I could respond, not even turning to wave goodbye. Shopping together, once a favorite activity, became an exercise in humiliation. "That's so cringe, Grandma," she'd say loudly when I held up a blouse I thought was pretty. "Nobody wears things like that anymore. It's embarrassing." Each comment stung, but I told myself it was just a phase. All teenagers go through this period of separating from family and finding their own identity. I remembered Julia's difficult years and how she'd eventually return to our close relationship. This too would pass, I reasoned. When Sophia's friends were around, I became nearly invisible. Once I brought snacks into the basement where they were watching movies. Sophia barely acknowledged me, and when I asked if they needed anything else, she practically shooed me away. "We're good. You can go now." I shared my concerns with Julia during one of our coffee dates. "I'm worried about Sophia," I admitted. "She seems so different lately." Julia sighed. "Roger and I have noticed it too, but the counselor says it's normal teenage stuff. Pushing boundaries, trying to fit in with peers. It'll pass." I nodded, wanting to believe it. "I just miss my sweet girl." "She's still in there," Julia assured me. "Somewhere under all that attitude." Then came the request that would change everything. Sophia called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice uncharacteristically sweet. "Grandma Nora, you know my birthday is coming up in 2 months, right?" "Of course, sweetheart. I've already been thinking about what to get you." "Well," she paused dramatically. "Kylie's dad threw her this amazing Sweet 16 party last month. It was at the Westlake Country Club with professional decorations and a DJ and everything. Everyone's still talking about it." I could sense where this was heading. "That sounds lovely." "I was hoping, maybe you could help me have a party like that. Mom and Dad said they can't afford anything that nice, but I thought maybe you could help." "It would mean everything to me, Grandma." Against my better judgment, I heard myself say, "Let's talk about what you have in mind." Little did I know, I had just committed to a financial and emotional journey that would ultimately break my heart. The morning after Sophia's phone call, she came over with a carefully prepared presentation. She had created a digital slideshow titled Sophia's Sweet 16 Dream Party, complete with images, venue suggestions, and a rough budget. "Grandma, I've thought about this so much," she said, her eyes bright with excitement as she connected her laptop to my TV. "I want it to be at the Westlake Country Club just like Kylie's was." As she clicked through her presentation, my initial enthusiasm quickly turned to concern. The Westlake Country Club was the most exclusive venue in our area, typically used for wedding receptions and corporate events. The rental fee alone would be substantial. And for food, I was thinking about Gardner Catering. They did this amazing sushi station at Kylie's party, and everyone loved it. She continued showing photos of elaborate food displays. "Sophia, honey, this looks wonderful, but I'm worried about the cost," I said gently. "The country club and professional catering might be beyond what I can manage." Her face fell immediately. "But Grandma, this is my only Sweet 16. I've never asked for anything this big before." Her eyes welled with tears. "Madison and Amber and all my friends had amazing parties. If mine isn't as good..." Her voice trembled. "I'll be so embarrassed. No one will even want to come." Something in me wanted to protect her from that imagined social disaster, even as another part recognized the manipulation. When she started crying in earnest, I felt my resolve weaken. "Let me look at the numbers and see what might be possible," I conceded. Her tears vanished instantly. "You're the best grandma I knew. You'd understand how important this is." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my budget spreadsheets and bank statements. The total she was proposing would come to around $12,000. It was far more than I had anticipated or could comfortably afford. I had some savings, but most of my money was in my retirement accounts. After careful consideration, I made the decision to withdraw a portion from my IRA. I'd pay a penalty, but I justified it as a once-in-a-lifetime expense for my only grandchild. I had always imagined helping with her wedding someday, but perhaps this could be my big gift to her instead. The sacrifices began immediately. I postponed the necessary roof repairs on my house, setting aside the $3,000 I'd saved for that purpose. I picked up extra weekend shifts at the hospital, despite the growing pain in my lower back from years of helping lift patients. Some nights, I could barely walk after a 12-hour shift, but I'd soak in a hot bath and remind myself it was temporary. The most difficult decision was selling my mother's antique pearl necklace and matching earrings. They were among the few valuable family heirlooms I possessed, meant to be passed down to Julia and eventually Sophia. But the $2,000 they brought from the jewelry dealer would cover the deposit on the country club. "Are you sure about this, Nora?" my friend Elaine asked when I told her about selling the pearls. "Your mother would want you to keep them in the family." "Sophia is family," I replied, "and her happiness means more to me than any object." The planning process was all-consuming. I spent hours researching vendors, comparing prices, and trying to secure the best deals without compromising Sophia's vision. I found the perfect venue, though it required putting down a non-refundable deposit 4 months in advance. I negotiated with the caterer for a menu that would impress Sophia's friends while not completely emptying my bank account. I hired a DJ who was known for playing at the local high school's events and would know the current popular music. I arranged for a professional photographer to document the evening. I ordered custom decorations in Sophia's chosen colors of silver and purple. Each decision was made with Sophia's approval, each check written with a silent prayer that this investment in her happiness would strengthen our bond. The physical toll of preparation was significant. I stayed up late into the night, addressing invitations in my best handwriting. I drove across town multiple times to select just the right shade of purple napkins or to approve the final design on the cake. My back pain worsened, but I pushed through with the help of over-the-counter pain relievers and determination. For Sophia's gift, I purchased a designer dress she had been coveting, one that cost more than any piece of clothing I had ever bought for myself. When I presented it to her 2 weeks before the party, I expected delight and gratitude. Instead, she examined the dress critically. "They had this in blue too, right? I think blue would have been better with my skin tone." "The receipt is in the bag," I said quietly. "We can exchange it if you'd prefer blue." She shrugged. "This is fine, I guess." "Thanks." She hung the dress in her closet without trying it on. The night before the party, I called Sophia to check if there were any last-minute details we had overlooked. "Everything's going to be perfect tomorrow," I said, unable to keep the excitement from my voice despite my exhaustion. "I can't wait to celebrate with you." There was a pause on the line before she responded. "Yeah, it should be good, as long as the DJ plays the right music and doesn't try to do those lame games some DJs do." "I specifically told him no games," I assured her. "Just music." "Okay, well, I should go. I need to get my beauty sleep before tomorrow." "Of course. I love you, Sophia." Another pause. "Night, Grandma." As I hung up, a sense of unease settled over me. Where was the enthusiastic girl who had presented her party plans months ago? I pushed away my concerns and focused on getting some rest before the big day. The morning of Sophia's Sweet 16, I woke before my alarm. Despite my exhaustion from months of preparation, adrenaline had me up and moving by 6. I checked my appearance carefully, having scheduled a hair appointment and manicure the day before. I wanted to look my best for the photos, wearing a new navy blue dress I'd purchased specifically for the occasion. I arrived at the Westlake Country Club 3 hours early to oversee the final preparations. The event coordinator greeted me in the lobby. "Mrs. Bennett, you're here bright and early. The decorating team just arrived." "Perfect. I want to make sure everything is exactly right for my granddaughter," I replied, following her into the ballroom. Over the next few hours, I watched with growing pride as the space transformed. Crystal chandeliers reflected off silver and purple decorations. The DJ set up his equipment on a small stage, testing sound levels. Caterers arranged elegant food stations around the perimeter. The multi-tiered cake, a masterpiece of purple fondant and silver edible pearls, took center stage on its own table. "It's beautiful," I whispered to myself. All the money, all the planning, all the physical discomfort had been worth it. Sophia would have her dream party. When Sophia arrived an hour before the scheduled start time, she was accompanied by her 4 closest friends. She wore the designer dress I'd purchased, now altered slightly to better fit her slim frame. Her hair was professionally styled, and her makeup, though more dramatic than I was used to seeing on her, made her look older and sophisticated. For a brief moment, when she first walked in, I saw genuine awe and excitement on her face. "Grandma, it looks amazing!" she exclaimed, spinning around to take in the decorations, the lighting, the flowers. My heart swelled. "I'm so happy you like it, sweetheart." She gave me a quick hug before her friends pulled her away to take photos in front of the custom Sophia's Sweet 16 backdrop. I stood back watching her laugh and pose, thinking that every penny had been worth this moment. As guests began to arrive, I took on the role of greeter, welcoming Sophia's friends and their parents. Most parents dropped their teenagers off, but a few stayed, and I made conversation with them near the refreshment table. Sophia floated through the growing crowd, accepting birthday wishes and compliments on her party. The shift in her behavior began subtly. When I approached her group to see if they needed anything, she stepped slightly away from me. "We're good," she said quickly, barely meeting my eyes. Later, when I tried to join a conversation between Sophia and some of her friends, there was a noticeable pause in their discussion. "What are you all talking about?" I asked brightly. "Just school stuff," Sophia answered vaguely. "Nothing interesting." I nodded and moved away, telling myself not to be sensitive. This was her night to shine with her peers. As the evening progressed, I tried to make myself useful, checking that the food stations were well stocked and that the DJ had the correct pronunciation of names for when he announced the birthday girl's special entrance. Sophia's reactions to my involvement became increasingly cold. When I mentioned to the DJ that Sophia particularly loved a certain song by a popular artist, she overheard and quickly interjected. "Grandma, it's pronounced differently now. Everyone says it the new way." She turned to the DJ. "Just play what's on my playlist exactly as written." I felt my face flush with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." Sophia rolled her eyes, a gesture not lost on the small group of friends standing nearby. One of them smirked. Later, during a popular song, I joined some of the other adults on the dance floor, swaying to the beat and enjoying the music. From across the room, I caught sight of Sophia watching me, her expression mortified. She whispered something to Madison, and both girls giggled while looking in my direction. The climactic moment came during what should have been the highlight of the evening. The DJ announced it was time for the birthday toast, and Sophia's father, Roger, raised his glass of sparkling cider. "To my beautiful daughter on her 16th birthday," he began. "Your mother and I are so proud of the young woman you're becoming." There were smiles and applause. Then, as was planned, I stepped forward to offer my own toast as the host of the event. "Sophia, my precious granddaughter," I started, my voice thick with emotion. "From the day you were born, you've been the light of my life. I'm so honored to celebrate this special day with you and to have been able to create this party for you to enjoy with your friends." I raised my glass higher. "To many more years of precious memories together. Happy birthday, sweetheart." There was a moment of awkward silence before scattered applause. Sophia stood frozen, a strange expression on her face. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, she said, "My grandma is so embarrassing, she should just leave." The room went completely quiet. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, some wide with shock, others averted in second-hand embarrassment. My glass remained suspended mid-air, my toast unfinished. In that moment, it felt as though someone had punched me directly in the stomach. My breath caught, and a wave of heat rushed from my chest to my face. But years of nursing had taught me to maintain composure in crisis. I slowly lowered my glass. my hand remarkably steady despite the emotional earthquake happening inside me. I looked at Sophia, searching for any sign of remorse or recognition of what she had just done. Her eyes held only annoyance, as if I were an inconvenience rather than the woman who had given everything to make this night possible. Without a word, I set my untouched drink on a nearby table. I smoothed the front of my new dress, lifted my chin slightly, and walked calmly toward the exit. No scene, no tears, no confrontation. Just the gentle click of my heels against the polished floor and the sound of whispers rising in my wake. In the lobby, the event coordinator approached with concern. "Mrs. Bennett, is everything all right?" "The party is going beautifully," I replied, my voice surprisingly even. "I'm just stepping out for some fresh air." Once inside my car, protected by its privacy, the carefully maintained composure crumbled. Tears came in a flood, blurring my vision and making it impossible to drive. I gripped the steering wheel and let the sobs rack my body, each one releasing months of ignored warning signs and years of one-sided sacrifice. My phone chimed with a text notification. It was from Julia. "Mom, where did you go? Are you okay?" I couldn't bring myself to respond. Not yet. First, I needed to find a way to breathe through the pain of public humiliation delivered by the person I loved most. The drive home passed in a blur. I'm not sure how I managed to navigate safely with tears still streaming down my face, but muscle memory and 30 years of driving the same routes guided me back to my empty house. I didn't bother turning on the lights when I entered. Instead, I sank onto my living room sofa, still wearing my party dress, my carefully applied makeup now smeared from crying. The darkness felt appropriate, matching the hollow feeling spreading through my chest. In the quiet of my home, surrounded by photographs chronicling Sophia's life from infancy to recent years, I replayed the evening's events. Had I truly been embarrassing? Was my presence so mortifying that it warranted public humiliation? Or had I simply become disposable once my financial contribution had secured the party of her dreams? My phone began ringing incessantly. Julia's name flashed on the screen 6 times before the calls switched to Roger. Text messages poured in. "Mom, where are you? What happened? Are you driving? Please call when you get this. Sophia won't tell me what's going on. Are you okay?" I silenced the phone, needing space from the chaos. This was unusual behavior for me. Typically, I was the mediator, the one who rushed to smooth over family conflicts. I was the one who explained away hurts, who forgave before apologies were even offered, who prioritized peace over personal dignity. But something had shifted inside me at that party. A lifetime of putting others first had culminated in a moment of such callous disregard that I couldn't immediately bounce back. I needed time to process not just Sophia's behavior, but my own role in creating it. The night passed sleeplessly. I moved from sofa to kitchen to bedroom, unable to find comfort anywhere. I thumbed through photo albums looking at images of a younger Sophia and me baking cookies, building sandcastles, reading books. Had those genuine connections been replaced entirely by materialistic expectations and social climbing? By morning, my emotional exhaustion had transformed into a strange clarity. For years, I had enabled Sophia's increasingly entitled behavior. I had justified her rudeness as just a phase. I had compensated for her lack of gratitude by giving more as if generosity could purchase appreciation. The pattern was unsustainable and unhealthy for both of us. At 7:30, my phone rang again. This time, it was Sophia herself. I took a deep breath and answered. "Grandma." Her voice sounded small, reminiscent of the little girl who would call me after having a bad dream. "Mom and Dad are super mad at me. They're making me call you." No apology, no recognition of what she had done, just annoyance at being forced to make contact. "Good morning, Sophia," I replied, my voice calmer than I expected. I think we need to talk about last night. I know. I shouldn't have said that. It just came out. Can you just tell Mom I apologize so she'll give me my phone back? The familiar pattern presented itself, minimal acknowledgement, no genuine remorse, expectation of immediate forgiveness. It was a dance we'd performed many times before with increasingly higher stakes. Actions have consequences, Sophia, I said quietly. What you did last night hurt me deeply. Not just the public embarrassment, but the disrespect after everything I did to give you the party you wanted. But I said I'm sorry. Her voice rose with indignation. What more do you want? It's not that big a deal. It is a big deal to me. I spent $12,000 on that party. Money that came from my retirement savings and from selling your great-grandmother's pearls. I worked extra shifts despite my back pain. I spent months planning every detail. Well, I didn't ask you to do all that, she snapped. The conversation continued deteriorating from there. Sophia's sense of entitlement had become so ingrained that she couldn't see beyond her own desires. When I suggested we take some time apart to reset our relationship, she became even more upset. Fine, be that way, she finally yelled before hanging up. That afternoon, I called my friend Dorothy, who worked as a therapist. Without breaching Sophia's privacy, I outlined the situation and my concerns. It sounds like both of you need some space and clear boundaries, Dorothy advised. Your feelings are completely valid, Nora. And setting consequences isn't punishing her. It's teaching her that relationships require mutual respect. I've always been the one to give in, I admitted, to smooth things over. And how has that been working for you? Dorothy asked gently. The answer was painfully obvious. By avoiding conflict and consistently placing Sophia's feelings above my own, I had contributed to creating a young woman who saw me as a resource rather than a person worthy of consideration. It's going to be uncomfortable to change the dynamic, I said. Growth usually is, Dorothy replied. But you're strong enough to do this, and ultimately, it's what Sophia needs from you now. I hung up with a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't about punishment. It was about teaching my granddaughter a vital life lesson about how to treat the people who love her. Sometimes, love meant standing firm rather than giving in. The next few days brought a family storm unlike anything we'd experienced before. Julia called repeatedly, her tone shifting from concern to frustration when I explained I wouldn't immediately reconcile with Sophia. Mom, she's just a teenager. They say thoughtless things sometimes. You know she loves you. I do know she loves me, I replied. But loving someone and respecting them are different things. She needs to learn that now before she enters adult relationships. So what, you're just going to cut her off after one mistake? Not cut her off. Set boundaries. There's a difference. Roger called next, his approach more diplomatic. Nora, we understand you're hurt. What Sophia did was completely inappropriate, and we've disciplined her. But she's devastated that you won't talk to her. Is she devastated, Roger? Or is she upset that actions finally have consequences? The conversation ended with Roger sighing heavily. She's just a kid, Nora. She's 16, I corrected, old enough to understand respect and appreciation. My sister Catherine took Julia's side, calling to lecture me about forgiveness. You're the adult in this situation, Nora. Act like it. I am acting like an adult, I responded. I'm teaching Sophia that relationships have boundaries. My brother Thomas, however, surprised me with his support. About time you stood up for yourself, sis. That girl has been walking all over you for years. The family lines were drawn, with most pressuring me to be the bigger person and quickly reconcile. It was the expected role for a grandmother: unconditional forgiveness, unlimited patience, bottomless generosity, without expectation of gratitude. Meanwhile, Sophia took her case to social media. Julia reluctantly informed me that Sophia had posted vague statements about toxic family members, and conditional love, positioning herself as the victim. Several of her friends had commented with supportive messages, none knowing the full context of what had occurred. "She has hundreds of likes on these posts, Mom," Julia told me. "People think she's the wounded party here." "That doesn't change the reality," I said firmly. A few days after the party, Julia sent me a link to the photographer's online gallery. Despite my better judgment, I scrolled through the images. There were dozens showing Sophia laughing, dancing, and celebrating with friends after my departure. She didn't appear devastated by my absence. If anything, she seemed to be having the time of her life. One particular photo caught my attention, Sophia with her arm around Madison, both girls raising their glasses in a toast, their expressions carefree and jubilant. It was time-stamped just 20 minutes after I had left. The images reinforced my resolve to maintain boundaries. I began implementing the consequences I had decided upon. First, I called the cheer camp coordinator to withdraw my offer to pay for Sophia's summer training. "There's been a change of plans," I explained. "She won't be attending this year." Next, I returned the designer clothing items I had purchased for her upcoming birthday. The store manager was understanding when I explained I needed to reassess my budget priorities. Finally, I contacted my credit card company to remove Sophia as an authorized user on the emergency card I had provided her. It had been intended for true emergencies, but recent statements showed purchases at coffee shops and online clothing stores. Each action was difficult. I took no pleasure in withdrawing support that Sophia had come to expect, but I reminded myself that these weren't punishments. They were natural consequences of broken trust and disrespect. Sophia's response was increasingly desperate attempts to restore the status quo without addressing the underlying issues. She sent text messages alternating between half-hearted apologies and accusations of me being unfair. She had Julia call to remind me about upcoming events she needed funding for. She even showed up at my house one afternoon, but I wasn't home, having started volunteering at a local community center to fill my suddenly abundant free time. The most difficult moment came during a dinner with Julia. She arrived at our usual restaurant with red-rimmed eyes. "Mom, this has gone far enough. Sophia is suffering." "In what way is she suffering exactly?" I asked. "She can't sleep. Her grades are slipping. She feels like her grandmother has abandoned her over one mistake." "Julia," I said carefully, "did you ever consider that perhaps this is the first time Sophia is experiencing real consequences for her behavior? That maybe this discomfort is necessary for her growth?" Julia's expression hardened. "I think you're being cruel. And I think you're doing what I did for too many years, making excuses for increasingly poor behavior instead of addressing it directly." The conversation escalated into our first serious argument in years. Julia accused me of holding a grudge. I suggested she examine her parenting approach. We both said things we regretted. As I drove home that night, tears stinging my eyes, I nearly called Sophia to tell her everything was forgiven. The weight of family disapproval and the pain of conflict almost overwhelmed my resolve. Decades of being the peacemaker, the accommodator, the one who sacrificed personal boundaries for harmony, pulled at me like gravity. I even composed a text message. "Sophia, I love you. Let's talk and put this behind us." My finger hovered over the send button. Then I remembered the look of disdain on her face at the party, the casualness with which she had dismissed months of my sacrifice, the ease with which she had continued celebrating after breaking my heart. I deleted the message. Some lessons required discomfort to truly take root. 2 weeks of family tension passed. I maintained minimal contact with Julia, exchanging only brief necessary texts. Sophia's messages became less frequent as her attempts to quickly resolve the situation without genuine accountability failed. The distance was painful, but I used the time to reconnect with parts of myself I had neglected while focusing so intently on my granddaughter. I joined a community garden group, reviving my love for growing vegetables that had been dormant since Roger built raised beds in their backyard for me to tend with young Sophia. I pulled out my watercolor supplies, stiff from disuse, and began painting again, something I had enjoyed before family obligations filled my schedule. I reconnected with old nursing friends for coffee and walks, rebuilding friendships I'd allowed to fade. One evening, as I was watering my newly planted tomato seedlings at the community garden, a familiar voice called my name. I turned to see Madison, one of Sophia's closest friends, standing awkwardly by the garden gate. "Mrs. Bennett, can I talk to you for a minute?" Surprised, I gestured for her to join me. "Of course, Madison. Is everything all right?" She glanced around nervously before speaking. "Sophia doesn't know I'm here. She'd probably never speak to me again if she found out." My curiosity piqued, I set down my watering can. "Why don't we sit on that bench? It sounds like you have something important to say." Madison twisted her hands in her lap as we sat. "I wanted to tell you what really happened at the party. Why Sophia said what she did." "I'm listening," I said gently. "It wasn't really about you being embarrassing," Madison began. "Sophia was trying to impress Amber and her group. They're the popular seniors who normally wouldn't give sophomores like us the time of day. But they came to the party because it was at the country club." Madison explained that throughout the evening, these older girls had made subtle comments about everything from the music to the decorations, creating an atmosphere where Sophia felt she needed to prove herself worthy of their attention. "When you got up to make that toast," Amber whispered to Sophia, "is your grandma going to tell baby stories now? How precious." Madison's voice took on a mocking tone, imitating the older girl. "And then Tiffany said, 'Better stop her before she ruins your rep completely.'" "So Sophia said what she did to impress them," I concluded. Madison nodded miserably. "The thing is, Mrs. Bennett, after you left, Amber's group stayed for maybe 20 more minutes, then declared the party adequate and left. They haven't spoken to Sophia since." "And the photos where she looks so happy?" "We were trying to cheer her up. She cried in the bathroom for almost half an hour after you left. Once she realized what she'd done, she was devastated, but too proud to admit it. I told her she should call you right away and apologize, but she said you'd never understand the pressure she was under." This new information didn't excuse Sophia's behavior, but it provided context I hadn't considered. The desire for peer approval at 16 was powerful, though it didn't justify cruelty to family who loved you. "Thank you for telling me this, Madison. That took courage." As Madison left, I reflected on my own teenage years and the foolish things I had done to fit in. None had involved publicly humiliating someone who loved me, but I understood the overwhelming desire for acceptance. The next day, I reached out to old friends I had neglected while focusing on Sophia. We planned a weekend trip to a beach house I'd always wanted to visit but had continually postponed. "It's time I started living my own life again," I told my friend Elaine as we made arrangements. The trip was refreshing in ways I hadn't anticipated. Walking along the shore at sunrise, laughing over wine with women who had known me for decades, I rediscovered parts of my identity beyond Sophia's grandmother, or Julia's mother. I returned home with renewed clarity about the healthy boundaries I wanted to maintain in all my relationships. A few days later, I received an unexpected call from an unfamiliar number. It was Mrs. Garcia, Sophia's school counselor. "Mrs. Bennett, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Sophia has been meeting with me regularly since what happened at her birthday party." "Is she all right?" I asked, immediate concern overriding our conflict. "Physically, yes. Emotionally, she's doing some important work. She's asked if you would be willing to meet with her mother, and me for a guided conversation. She doesn't want to pressure you, but she feels ready to take responsibility in a meaningful way." The meeting was arranged for the following afternoon. I arrived at the school with mixed emotions: hope for reconciliation, fear of more hurt, and determination to maintain the boundaries I'd established. Mrs. Garcia's office was warm and inviting. Julia arrived moments after I did, her expression cautious but not hostile. When Sophia entered, I was struck by how different she looked from the confident birthday girl of 3 weeks ago. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, her makeup minimal, her expression vulnerable. "Thank you all for coming," Mrs. Garcia began. "Sophia has prepared some thoughts she'd like to share if that's all right with everyone." Sophia nodded and pulled out a handwritten page. Her hands trembled slightly. "Grandma Nora," she began, her voice quavering. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about what I did at my party, and I'm truly deeply sorry. Not just for the horrible words I said, but for how I've been treating you for months leading up to that night." She went on to explain much as Madison had the peer pressure she'd felt. But unlike our previous conversations, she didn't use this as an excuse. "The truth is, no matter what anyone else was saying, I made the choice to hurt you. You've been nothing but loving and supportive my entire life, and I repaid that by treating you like you didn't matter." Tears streamed down her face as she continued. "Mrs. Garcia has been helping me understand why I did it. I've been so focused on being accepted by people who don't really care about me that I hurt the person who loves me most consistently. And then instead of really apologizing, I just wanted the problem to go away quickly." She looked directly at me, her eyes red but steady. "I understand now that trust takes time to rebuild. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust and respect, even if that means accepting the consequences you've set. I know I can't expect you to just forgive me right away, but I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship, whatever that looks like." Julia, who had been silent until now, spoke softly. "Mom, I owe you an apology too. Instead of holding Sophia accountable, I pressured you to quickly forgive and move on. I was wrong." The three of us talked for over an hour, with Mrs. Garcia gently guiding the conversation when needed. For the first time in perhaps years, we spoke honestly about expectations, boundaries, and the difference between love and respect. As we prepared to leave, Sophia asked hesitantly, "Grandma, would it be okay if I called you tomorrow, just to talk?" "I'd like that very much," I replied. It wasn't an immediate resolution, but it was an honest first step toward rebuilding something that had been broken. And this time, we would build it on a stronger foundation. Over the following months, Sophia and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. Unlike our previous pattern of quick forgiveness without addressing underlying issues, we took intentional steps toward a healthier connection. Our first positive milestone came when Sophia proposed a project of her own design. "I'd like to volunteer at Sunrise Retirement Home," she told me during one of our weekly phone calls. "Maybe twice a month on Saturdays. Would you be willing to go with me? I thought we could read to residents or help with activities." The suggestion touched me deeply. It wasn't about material things or social status, but about giving time to others. "I think that's a wonderful idea," I responded. Our first Saturday at Sunrise was slightly awkward as we both navigated our new dynamic. But by the third visit, we had established a comfortable routine. Sophia would read to residents with vision problems while I helped with craft activities. Afterward, we'd have lunch together and talk about the experience. "Mr. Peterson told me about growing up during the Depression today," Sophia shared during one of these lunches. It made me realize how much I take for granted. These conversations revealed a maturity in Sophia that had been overshadowed by peer pressure and materialism. The retirement home visits became our new tradition, replacing shopping trips and expensive outings with something more meaningful for both of us. Another significant change was the establishment of monthly relationship check-ins. Mrs. Garcia had suggested this approach, and though it sounded formal, it provided a structured opportunity to address concerns before they festered into larger issues. "I felt hurt when you canceled our plans last minute to go to the mall with Kylie," I said during one such conversation. In the past, Sophia might have become defensive or dismissed my feelings. Now she listened thoughtfully before responding. "I'm sorry that hurt you. I didn't think about how it would feel from your perspective. Next time, I'll give you more notice if I need to reschedule. These small exchanges built a framework of mutual respect that had been missing before. My relationship with Julia also evolved during this time. Our initial conflict over how to handle Sophia's behavior had exposed deeper differences in our approaches to parenting and conflict resolution. Through several honest, sometimes difficult conversations, we reached a new understanding. I've been thinking about why I was so quick to pressure you to forgive Sophia, Julia admitted during a mother-daughter dinner. I think I've always relied on you to smooth over problems. It was easier than dealing with the discomfort of real consequences. I enabled that pattern, I acknowledged. By always being the one to give in, I taught both of you that my boundaries weren't important. Julia nodded. I'm trying to be more thoughtful about that with Sophia now. It's harder in the moment, but I think it's better for her long term. One of the most meaningful developments was Sophia's gradual understanding of the financial sacrifice the party had represented. When she learned about the sold pearls and withdrawn retirement funds, she was genuinely shocked. I never realized, she whispered, tears in her eyes. I just thought, I didn't think about where the money came from at all. A few days later, she presented me with a handwritten plan. I got a weekend job at the mall, she explained. I want to start paying you back for the party, even if it takes years. I was touched by the gesture, though the money itself was less important than the recognition of sacrifice it represented. We agreed that 20% of her earnings would go toward repayment, with the understanding that her education remained the priority. Perhaps the most telling moment in our healing journey came unexpectedly during a dinner at Julia and Roger's home. Sophia had invited a new friend from her advanced biology class, a girl named Hannah, who shared her recently discovered interest in medicine. As we sat around the table, Hannah made a casual comment about old people not understanding technology. Sophia's response was immediate and firm. Actually, my grandmother was using computers for patient records before either of us was born. She's really tech-savvy and taught me how to make my first PowerPoint when I was 8. The defense was delivered without drama or confrontation, just a straightforward correction of an ageist assumption. Our eyes met briefly across the table, and I saw in her gaze something that had been missing for too long: genuine respect. The journey from that painful Sweet 16 moment to this new relationship wasn't quick or easy. There were setbacks along the way, moments when old patterns threatened to reemerge. But by standing firm when it mattered, I had helped shape a more authentic connection, not just with Sophia, but with myself. I discovered that sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away until they're ready to truly see you. Not as a resource or a convenience, but as a person worthy of basic respect and consideration. In holding that boundary firmly but compassionately, I had given Sophia something far more valuable than an expensive party. I had shown her that healthy relationships require mutual care and respect. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Remember, your worth isn't determined by how much you give without reciprocation. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to honor your own boundaries when they're tested.